We met Robert in a previous episode where we discussed Kennesaw State Campus Carry laws and the U.S. government shutdown. Today, we're going to have a discussion about everyone's favorite subject of this time of year, taxes. Specifically, Robert says he can't find many people who are happy with the current tax plan. I have some idea why that might be, but I wanted to have him on the show to discuss how Trump's new tax plan has affected people in their 2018 taxes.
You're listening to the Unframe of Mind Show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected, intellectual intercourse of your life. Your host, Daniel Wagner, battles the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.
Alrighty, and welcome to the show, Robert.
Good morning. How are you?
All right, man. I'm doing fantastic. We're just hanging out in the morning. It's another early morning for me. Decided to get up and talk a shop with you. I'm doing great.
How early did you get up this morning?
I've been up since about 4. It's been quite an early morning.
It happens.
It's not uncommon for me to be up. I was actually up yesterday at 3:30 in the morning to record an interview with a guy from the UK who was a hip hop artist in that area. It was like before noon for him. But I mean, when you want to do something in the world, you just got to get up and do the work necessary to do it. You know, it's got to be willing.
Is this true?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into the main subject of the conversation here, you had mentioned before we started that there was an update on the campus carry issue that maybe you'd wanted to tell us about.
Yeah, Sally Harrell, she is a Georgia senator. This is her first term, I believe. She unseated a Republican senator. I would have to go and find a few more details there, but this is her first term. She has introduced a bill here in Georgia actually to repeal campus carry. Our legislative session here in Georgia has just started. It's been in, about a week or two, and it'll go for a few more weeks. Again, I'll have to check on those dates, but it's actually presently in session. And again, Sally Harrell, her district is roughly in the metro Atlanta area. Again, I'd have to pull up her district. But she has introduced a bill, as I said, to repeal campus carry. Everything on social media and the press, you have probably about 50-50 on both sides. I mean, obviously, everybody that knows more about me, I'm going to lean a little more liberal on this. The people that I read and the comments that I see are going to be more on the liberal side. Right. But when I see comments, going back and forth, there are a lot of conservative views on this, and even last time we talked about high schools and grade school teachers potentially arming themselves. That discussion is actually coming up as this bill has been introduced. So we'll see where it goes. But it is, interesting to see, that the bill has been introduced. And again, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, we do see a lot of bills get introduced that never go anywhere. So it's always, it kind of sucks to get your hopes up about something that agrees with what you think should happen, and then it ends up not working out. So I mean, I do wish you the best of luck in pursuing that goal. I also obviously disagree with it based on our last conversation, but like what you were saying about, you kind of have a 50-50 split on the comments section about what they should do. I was just curious, would you be like, what would you say is the best argument you've seen for the opposing side?
I've said it all along. I grew up in Georgia. I was born in South Georgia in 1980. I went through public schools my entire life, even all the way through college, my master's degree. I don't know what changed in 2017 that we needed to have guns in the classroom. Was it the internet? Was it media? Was it, again, nobody can answer that question for me. What changed that we needed guns in the classroom in 2017? And until somebody has a better argument for that, I know we've discussed that too, but I just still don't understand. And even further, to take that into grade school and high school, classrooms, I don't see where this is going there. So
yeah, I imagine. I mean, my best answer for that would be, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's become a national outrage. It's become pumped up in the media, and it's got a magnifying glass put on it. Not to mention, we're suddenly seeing an uptick in school shootings and that kind of thing. especially as it's being reported. I don't know if, as far as the numbers, if there's necessarily been an uptick or it's just been an uptick in the reporting of it. I'd have to look at the numbers to get a clear picture of that, but definitely having a magnifying glass on the issue makes it where people start to have a real strong opinion about it, where they normally wouldn't have had opinion or even give a shit before. Because I think you have a scenario where you have different communities have different concerns, and some schools, they may carry guns in school, or they may arm the teachers and be just fine. It wouldn't be an issue whether you had them or not. I guess especially a lot of smaller rural communities and that kind of thing. And maybe in the inner cities, it might be a little bit different of an issue because of a different culture and a different way of life and a different kind of attitude toward how we handle conflict. So I think it's definitely an issue that needs to be handled within each community on its own merits. If I was to have it my way.
Yeah, I understand. The basement I'm sitting in right now. That there's 2 or 3 guns in the closet back there. I own guns. My father, gave me guns. It's not that I am completely anti-guns, but I just, again, it just goes back to, I don't know what changed. And, and not to take this completely down the Russia path, but we've already seen proof that Russia funneled money through the NRA to get, 45 elected. And it goes back to, I think, a point you just made there. Would we really be that in outrage about it and putting things into people's minds about, is this really a big deal to actually really need these laws, for example? So again, it goes back to, that question of what really changed in 2017 that we really have that need. And was it the NRA, that was, really, writing these laws and pushing these things to, number one, get, people in the press because these things are sensational. But again, I just keep going back to that. I don't see the necessity of it.
That is a big problem, the sensationalization of all these topics that normally wouldn't be big topics in most areas. Because when you're a media company, you get clicks from these terrible stories. And so, of course, you have an incentive to go find terrible stories, and that's what you want to focus on. That's what you want to write all your stories about because people are interested in it. And it's like this feedback loop that keeps getting worse and worse. And really, the actual issue isn't getting worse. It's just the public perception of the issue is getting worse. And I do appreciate that you can actually have more of a nuanced view on this because you have been exposed to guns. You even own guns yourself. So you're not like in this automatic freak out mode like most people on the left tend to be, in my experience, of guns are the fucking devil and we can't touch them ever, and nobody should ever have one except for the police, in which case, we don't like the police, but they should have guns. The logic doesn't work, you see. At any rate, so if you didn't have anything else to add to that particular topic, I'll go ahead and move on to the next piece of our conversation. The meat. No,
we're good there. So.
the meat, if you will, and just as a full closure,
foreclosure.
Learn to talk. A full disclosure, rather, is that as many of you know who are regular watchers of mine, I'm actually an anarchist. So, as a general rule and a principle, I don't agree with stealing people's property, and under any circumstances, especially by use of force. So you're just with that in mind, we can continue moving on with this. I don't tend to take the view that I'm not going to be the right side and you're going to be the left side. I don't think this is how this conversation is going to go, but we'll definitely see what we're going with. You said you're hearing from a lot of people about the new Trump's new tax plan. People are getting their taxes in and they're finding out that they're not quite happy with what their results are. Like, what are you hearing? What are you experiencing so far?
Yeah, I'll go out to the Twitter feed here in a second. Nobody. Now I will preface this. I have not had it. Literally 2 more of my tax forms came in this week. The investment tax forms, they always come in like mid-February. So literally, I was not able to even do an estimate, of where our taxes are going to come in, and until, literally probably next week. So I've not had a chance to do that. But I'm seeing things, for example, and I had, this discussion with Martha Zoller, who was David Perdue's state policy director before she actually left to go and help get Brian Kemp elected here in Georgia. Let me put you. I don't know if you own your home, or if you're able to say we own our home.
I do.
And if you were, and you don't have to say, but let's just say that you, for the last 8 or 10 years that you've owned your home, that you have been able to itemize your deductions, probably because of that huge chunk of mortgage interest that you pay. And so the new standard deduction is around, is it 20,000? It's this huge number now.
Yeah, for married filing jointly, I think it's around 24,000. It's double. It's around double what it used to be. I think it was 12,600 the year before, and now it's 24.
Yeah, so $24,000. So in Metro Atlanta, if you are, let's say, a younger couple and just coming out of college, that you're probably combined monthly, let's say you have a college degree, you've got a decent job, but your combined, income for your household is probably somewhere around, if you're lucky, 100 to 150,000 a year. You're not going to be able to afford a home to come up to that much interest in your first year. Also, taxes here in Georgia are not that much. So and also mortgages are not cheap. You have closing costs. You have all these other things that go into that mortgage. So, okay, yes, I hope that people are going to continue to buy homes. You are able to, hopefully, as we'll get to this, build equity in this home. But the biggest reason that people usually buy homes is that tax deduction. It's one of the trade-offs of, it's literally, as we were looking at the hole in the ceiling, that's why we put up with these things as homeowners. Because, okay, you're building equity, and it's the trade-off of not having to pay as much tax every year of that. So if you follow me here and you're a new couple, and weighing your options of whether you're going to buy a home or rent, are you really going to go out and take out that expensive mortgage that you're going to get no more benefit on your taxes for? Because in that first year of that mortgage, you're going to pay the most interest on that fixed rate mortgage than you ever will the other 30 years of that mortgage.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I think I'm following you so far.
So, and there are news articles out there that we could quote that say that this is about to send the housing market into just oblivion, because first-time home buyers are what really needs to be out there to actually keep the whole home. The average, I was in the mortgage industry for just over a decade. I did IT in it, but the average mortgage loan is refinanced or paid off within 7 years. If that gives you, and again, this is just going off of memory here.
Right.
That whole kind of beast, as I'll call it, it thrives on that. So if this is yet one more huge change in that. People change their habits because of money. And again, if you're looking at this and trying to decide, hey, does it really make sense for me to actually buy this home? I think you're going to see a lot of people look at that huge dollar amount and say, no, I'm just going to go rent.
So to be clear, what you're saying is people do tend to make decisions based on financial benefits or financial punishments, depending on what the situation is. They do tend to look at their options and make those decisions accordingly, right?
Corporations do the same thing too, and we'll get into that if we have time too.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up a very in an overarching broad federal type tax situation. It's interesting you brought up a specific example of a specific time in someone's life when they might be considering buying a home or not. And I understand your concern. And I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the campus carry laws, is like you kind of need to have specific tax laws or whatever the rules are that people need to follow. They need to be more specified to the area. Like you can't just, I don't see how anybody can stand over the whole country and say, this is Republican, Democrat, anybody. I don't see how you can pass a law that says well, this is the tax rate for everybody here, and this is if you make this much. Well, for different areas you live in, cost of living is higher, food cost is higher because of the location you are in terms of distribution. Gas prices might be different. There's so many different tiny elements of everybody's financial lives, that for somebody to stand over the top of it all and go, well, this rule is for everybody, it never makes any sense. It never works, because you can always cherry pick those little stories that don't quite, that look like, oh, this is terrible because X, or this is terrible because Y, or the other side can do the same thing and say, well, this is beneficial because X and Y. And as a result, I don't think you ever get any real clear answer on what it actually should be or how things should be. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope, again, I think I've said this several times, I hope this does not send the housing market into a cliff oblivion. I hope not. I mean, for my own self, and if you own a home as well, I hope as everyone that hopes to buy a home, we hope the value continues to go up. But everything that we are seeing, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, even the realtor associations, they were lobbying against this change in the tax bill.
Oh yeah, they can see what's coming down the road for sure.
Yeah. But yet the corporations, I mean, we are already seeing Amazon paid 0 in income tax, Netflix 0 in income tax, and yet Netflix is increasing the cost of their service.
Wait, you're saying big corporate companies get like tax breaks from the government? No way. You're kidding me. I've never heard of this magic you speak of.
Yeah. So why I don't understand, how that is justified, and and somehow, well, we suspect, and it's probably pretty true, that they have obviously a whole lot, the machine and the cogs and the lobbyists that they're able to get in front of the folks in DC. Mm-hmm. And okay, here's your pre-written bill. This is what we want you to, and they're going to, knock on the doors literally every day or several times a day. Hey, when is this going to happen? And, are we going to take you to dinner? This is what ends up happening, after all that. And going back to your other point there too, because we have a number of friends that live up in the Northeast. I remember leading up to the end of last year, the state and local property taxes up in the Northeast mm-hmm. are huge. I mean, they're a whole lot more than what you see here in the Southeast. Those are also capped. I believe there is a maximum $10,000 deduction now.
Just talking about for state and local?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that is capped at $10,000 maximum. So what folks were doing in the last end of the tax year is you have municipalities up in the Northeast. They were actually saying, okay, you can prepay your future, tax liability in this tax year so that you are able to take advantage of that. But that's all gone because, of course, everything you're filing for tax year 2018, you can't get any more benefit from that. But you have municipalities up there that were allowing folks to kind of prepay that so that they can get that huge maximum benefit, and before, again, all that's gone.
Yeah, it's you mentioned the idea that the housing market could potentially collapse or crash as a result of this new tax plan. I would argue, it's probably an element of it for sure. I mean, because people do, like we agreed, people do make financial decisions based on what their tax implications are going to be or what their financial implications are going to be. So basically, we agree people make financial decisions based on what kind of benefits or what kind of bonuses they're going to receive. And that's one element that the tax cut is going to cause issues in the housing market. What I'm also seeing is we have a Federal Reserve that is playing with interest rates back and forth, and they can't decide what to do with it. We have them printing out extra money that we don't necessarily need in the economy. It's inflating the currency unnecessarily. People are making financial decisions there too. And like a collapse in the housing market, I think we started to see it in 2008, and I think the government sat there and tried to prop it up, and they kept inflating that bubble and just kept kicking the can down the road. And I don't think we've ever finished that recession yet. I think we're going to see something now as a result. I've heard people say even worse than Great Depression type scenario. I don't know that I go that far, but it's very possible because people are so used to kind of making these decisions based on the Fed's interest rates versus what the real interest rates probably should be. And as a result, like in my local area, we had a boom over the last few years of all this new buildings coming in. Meanwhile, at the same time, malls are closing down because they can't, like, it makes no sense. You have all this new building in this area and this other area is closing down, and people are making these decisions. And now we have a big, huge bloated market, and people aren't buying. Like we're packed up to the gills in the Nashville area. I mean, I own my home. I don't pay a lot because I live out in a rural area. So the tax implications are pretty minor, to the point I don't even know what they are, to be honest. All of my taxes are taken out through the mortgage lending company as part of my payment. And my payment's incredibly low, so I don't really sweat it too much. But I know a lot of people, like you were saying, up in the Northeast, they also have to deal with state taxes and local taxes and all sorts of other sales taxes. You know, every tax under the sun. It's a lot for people to deal with. And this can't be a good, I mean, it could be a good thing for some, but I don't think overall it's good to sit there and mess with people's money regardless of who's in charge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the huge deduction and the simplification of taxes. Remember politicians over the past number of years, even you may have to go back a number of years, but remember, you should be able to file your taxes on a postcard. You remember those promises?
I do.
Of some politicians. This is getting closer to that. You also see the bumper stickers that say the fair tax and things like that.
Yeah, I like the fair tax. I've heard about it, but it'll never happen because there's too much incentive for the government to keep the shit complicated as hell. I mean, honestly, there's billions of dollars every year that people don't claim that they should be owed back because they don't understand the tax system. They don't know what to put down. They just miss lots of money. So, I mean, if I'm the government, I'm going, I really don't need to simplify this. I'm making billions of dollars every year just by keeping it complicated.
Understood. And there is something to be said for that. But I almost guarantee you, I'll bet you $1. I guarantee you, if you go and look up the PACs that went into printing those fair tax bumper stickers, you're eventually going to find wealthy individuals and or corporations that were putting money into those fair tax bumper stickers and all that. I'll call it propaganda, for lack of a better term. Yes, I agree. You know, if I'm not mistaken, for example, in the UK, you mentioned that you did an interview with him recently about a very different topic. But I had a friend that immigrated here to the U.S. from the UK. The tax system there, if I'm not mistaken, he tells me they don't even file taxes every year. Mm-hmm. Based upon what you do every year, you just go into a tax bracket that's assigned to you, and you don't file taxes. That's another extreme, that maybe that the U.S. is not quite ready for. But again, it goes back to what is truly fair. Is it truly fair that you are paying, X percent of your income, and meanwhile, these corporations with all their tax attorneys, all their accountants, like Netflix, like Amazon, are literally able to pay zero in federal income tax.
So let me ask you this: when you mentioned the tax, the fair tax having a bunch of high donors and PACs and putting money into it, I would say that's not an argument, because just because somebody supports something doesn't necessarily make the core idea wrong. Like, as far as I could tell, from what I understand of the fair tax plan, is basically there's a flat tax that everybody pays no matter what. I even like the idea of just making it all in sales tax, where even people who aren't currently on the tax rolls end up paying taxes too. They, people that are going under the table to earn a living, they end up paying taxes as well. I think that in terms of making it fair across the board, everybody should pay taxes regardless of how much you make. I don't think that there should be a cutoff where we shouldn't have a scenario where 50% of the population pays no tax. Like, that's ridiculous. That's a huge conflict of interest when it comes to also allowing these same people the ability to vote, because obviously if you're gonna vote in favor of tax policies that keep you in that arena where I don't pay any taxes. Like, I don't have any skin in the game. So why would I vote for things that suddenly make me have skin in the game? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, just because you have people with lots of money putting money into printing the bumper stickers doesn't necessarily make the idea itself wrong or incorrect. I just wonder what you think about the core idea itself. If you think the idea itself, regardless of who's funding it, if you think the idea is a good one or a moral one for that matter.
The fair tax specifically?
Right.
If it's truly implemented, but what we see implemented right now is not a fair tax.
Oh, sure,
I mean,
sure.
The corporations should be paying their fair share. And even more specifically here in Georgia, there was a very good radio segment that was done about a year or two ago now on local NPR radio that truly explains, Georgia has become a new Hollywood because of the tax, benefits here in Georgia to kind of bring it more local. And if I'm not mistaken, and I spoke to someone on one of my business trips recently that explained that it's not just Georgia that does this. There are other states as well. But the accountants come up with, when they do the project, and there are minimums out there, that this project is going to make X number of dollars. And so that is subject to this much Georgia tax. And so a percentage of that, and so the made in Georgia peach at the end, by the way, they get a little bit extra tax break on that if they include the peach.
Oh, and
so
nice.
That's why you see the made in Georgia, and that, whoever that lady is saying made in Georgia.
Yeah.
That's why you keep seeing that, because they get a little bit extra tax break for that. But they are immediately able to take that tax credit and sell it for cash. There is actually an open market. You can go to the website, and so it's actually a discounted because it's present value, future value, and all this. Mm-hmm. But if you owe Georgia tax, you can basically go out there and get a cheaper discount on your Georgia tax because you are buying someone else's tax credit to cover your current Georgia tax liability. And so there are only a couple of states like Georgia that are doing that, but apparently that's why it's so popular, because they can go ahead and say that this project has made or will make, again, that I'm just paraphrasing as I remember this, but that's how it's, going, here in Georgia, just specifically for Georgia tax, which is completely separate than what's going on for federal tax there.
Hey, shoot, come to Tennessee. You don't owe any state tax. We do it all through sales tax at 10%.
And then our friends in Florida, they have the same thing too.
Yeah, I kind of miss Wichita, Kansas. We used to live there, and the sales tax was 6%, but of course you owed state tax as well. But it wasn't like totally terrible. But then again, I was working at a fast food restaurant at the time, so it's not like I was paying much, if any. I was probably getting tax back, or I hate that term, tax back, because it's not tax back when you have kids. It's actually an incentive. It's a benefit. But yeah. I was receiving that at the time, still receiving that. I was wanting to bring up this. I was reading. Let me see what you think about this. Pew Research Center analysis. Let me just read the quote here so we make sure we get everything correct. In 2015, which is the latest information they have, shows that taxpayers with incomes. Lost my spot. Shows that taxpayers with incomes of $200,000 or more paid well over half, that's 58.8% of federal income taxes, though they accounted for only 4.5% of all returns filed. By contrast, taxpayers with income below $30,000 filed nearly 44% of all returns, but paid just 1.4% of all federal income tax. In fact, 2/3 of the nearly 66 million returns filed by people in that lowest income tier owed no tax at all. Oh, so wait, I was saying 50%, but it's more like 2/3. Holy shit. I forgot that. Yeah, so say you have a system of taxes where 2/3 of the people pay no taxes at all. Like that's not a good recipe for success, I wouldn't say, in terms of voting new tax policies go.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be glad to look out. Were they saying just specifically income tax, or were they taking account like all the other benefits that you get from the tax or what have you?
Well, this was in terms of taxpayers with incomes on their federal tax statements when they actually filed them was around this amount. This is actually what they filed. there was some other information that I found rather interesting, talking about the well, where the hell did I put it? I had it here a minute ago. Anyway, it was talking about the amount of taxes that are paid by certain, whether it's income tax for individual taxpayers versus corporate taxpayers. And you mentioned that corporations should pay their fair share. But what I was seeing was that corporations pay around 9%. They only account for 9% of the taxes that are filed. I have lost my stuff here. What has happened? I had it printed off here.
No worries.
Anyway, I just grabbed a couple of notes off of that to make sure I had my information, and I don't. Oh, there it is. Estimated 48% of all federal revenues come from individual income tax, and estimated 9% from corporate income tax. So that's an interesting stat. You do with it what you will.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And could very well be. But I did want to just read a couple of these interesting tweets that we've been collecting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's some tax break. For the first time in years, I have to pay taxes. WTF. I did have to take a dog picture. Claude is looking for his tax refund. Can you retweet and help him find it?
Cute.
A CPA. For 25 years in the profession, I've worked with the same tax form. Then the Trump tax scam came along and produced this abomination. Here are 2 pages plus 6 schedules of the biggest piece of garbage I have ever had to deal with in my years as a CPA.
That's funny. Now, what about the Obama tax? What would they say? The Trump tax? What was the phrase? What was the phrase?
I know. And you, of course, you could take that, several different ways. But it was, I did include that because it was just a very interesting take that,
right.
Change and, CPAs and that whole opinion of, and he called the current, tax form an abomination.
The Trump tax abomination. Yeah. Let's make sure that we also mention the Obama tax abomination, the Bush tax abomination, the Clinton tax abomination. Oh, well, we could go back as far as the eye can see. Well, I'd say specifically around 1913, but that's conversation for another time.
Yep. We just finished our taxes. We owe $4,200 more than usual. I guess we needed to pay for some uber rich families' gas for their yacht, for example.
That's not how this works.
But these are the opinions, that people are seeing the news. They are actually, going to file. So another angle of this is, so when you go and you file your, or actually when you get hired at a company, you are able to declare single, married, 1, 2, 3 dependents and so forth. And that is going to, of course, estimate your taxes that comes out, of every check. There were some comments that some of the politicians made, here's a couple more crumbs that the Republicans were throwing at, everyone in a couple of checks. And so that gave you, what, in some cases, $15, $20 more in a paycheck. If you get $15, $20 more in a paycheck, what are you going to do with it, for example? I mean, I guess people are probably going to spend it. I don't know that people ran to the bank and put that in a savings account.
Yeah, there's no incentive for saving anyway. That's been like that way before this tax plan came about. I mean, I remember as a kid, my parents putting money in savings and telling me that, when you save money, the bank will pay you, X amount of interest on that savings. So there's an incentive for saving. In my adult life, I have never seen a savings account that gave me more than a couple pennies on my savings. And I tried to take a picture of it on my phone. I was going to tweet out my bank and say, listen, if y'all need that 2 pennies that bad, you can keep it. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, literally, I got 2 cents on my savings.
Exactly.
Like, what are you doing?
Exactly. So here we are in 2019. I've got all these tweets when we're talking about. And so now if you were used to filing it, I'm 38, or, I have friends that are, also about my age, but if you're used to getting a substantial refund every year and you did absolutely nothing, most everybody, this is not top of mind to them. They just file their taxes every year. They go down to H&R Block, they go down to wherever, they put all those forms on the desk, right, and they give them a number back. And the first question they're going to ask is, what's my refund? And so if they're hearing back, I need a check for $50, please.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure that that does happen in some scenarios. I mean, in my particular scenario, I was actually surprised at the amount I got back because as a couple, we made about 12,000 more than we made the previous year, which means we should have gotten ideally we should have gotten less back on our refund. However, there was a couple things that were put into place that I ended up able to increase it back to its levels from last year. For example, they allow you $500 for dependents that are 17 and over. Well, under the previous year, I would have not got that $500 credit because my oldest daughter just turned 17, and that would have been $500 less that I got. So it ended up kind of pushing it back up into where I normally would have been. I mean, it affects everybody differently, I'm sure, depending on where you're at. I don't like the idea of anybody taking this playing with my money so much, or really stealing my money. This is kind of the core issue for me. What I wanted to get to you, get your thoughts on really, and discuss is this idea that we should even pay. I heard an argument, and the basic conclusion is that taxation is theft. This is something that I'm sure you've heard before. I love that you kind of giggled at that, as if that was ridiculous, right? Is that kind of what went through your mind a little bit?
Well, no, it's more so that it's the perception that the folks in DC or your state capital, it's all the press around it of, the waste that we hear about. And all that. Okay, I'm paying my taxes. We live in this great country and everything, but is every single tax dollar that I pay really going for the best thing, right?
Now, wouldn't that be nice? We know better than that. It doesn't matter who's in charge. We know better than that. But I would like I would like to see a scenario where if you pay taxes, it's because you've done it voluntarily, because you do believe in the American project, because you do believe in what the mission is and what they're doing. But as soon as you do it voluntarily, it's no longer a tax. It's considered a donation. It's considered charity. I mean, anytime somebody comes at me at the point of a gun and says, you owe us money, I'm like, owe you for what? You don't provide me any service. You certainly don't do the things that I want you to do with the money. Like, I have no say in what you actually spend the money on once I do give it to you. Like, I don't even care if you are feeding starving children in Africa with that money. It's not right to steal it from me in the first place against my will. This should be a voluntary system, ideally, in which case then it's not government. It's not the same thing, Government is, in my closest estimation, the monopoly on the use of force. Like, they're the only ones that have that ability. Like, they're the only ones that have the ability to kick down my door and come in and raid my house if I go X amount of years not paying my taxes and ignoring them. And eventually there's going to be a gun in my face and I'm going to go to jail. And if I resist, I will either... Their only mission statement is they continue to keep pushing that force on you until you either comply or die. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, the logical conclusion of it all. That's pretty much the only tool they have to use when you get right down to the dirty deeds of it. Yeah.
And even going back to the ACA, Obamacare, that is still the law of the land, like it or not. Mm-hmm. But the crux of it, when it went all the way to the Supreme Court, is it is valid because it is another tax. Like it or not, I mean, we have Medicaid, we have Medicare, we have all these other things out there. Those are taxes. And, if you lose a job when you get older, all these other, demographics of people, these are plans that are in place to have these stopgaps. Yeah. I mean, because of the housing market, back when it plummeted back in 2009, I lost my job and the company also went under. I had no health insurance. And the only option, because I'm a big guy, was to either go to a private market and pay double for health insurance or go to the state of Georgia at the time, which does not exist now because of the ACA, and go into a high-risk pool and pay a high, premium. That does not exist now because the ACA said you don't have to have that anymore, Georgia, because you have the ACA. But these are all the things that are in place now. But again, it went all the way to the Supreme Court because it is a tax.
So I always get this image in my mind of. Let me see if this analogy makes sense to you. I don't know if you're aware of the reasons why we even have healthcare as part of our employer package. Are you aware of the history behind that and the reasons why our employer is the one that provides our healthcare, but not any other insurance that we?
I'd be glad to hear why. Sure.
Okay,
yeah.
so there was I believe it was during World War II when we were trying to fund the war effort, and the government was trying to force companies to stop raising wages. Like you couldn't, if you like, typically a company will compete in the market by offering bigger income packages. Like say, hey, well, that company over there's paying you 14, we'll pay you 14.25 if you come work for us. And people are like, okay, we'll go over there. Well, what was happening is, people, the government sat there and said, well, we're putting a freeze on that. You cannot give raises to employees anymore. Well, now as a company, I'm going, well, I need people to come work here. I can't incentivize them by raising wages. So what ended up happening is we have companies including different kind of fringe benefits, and health insurance ended up being one of those ideas that, as part of like an overall package. Well, we can only pay you this amount because the government says we can only, we can't give you raises, but we'll give you this benefit and this benefit and this benefit. And then you get people going and working those jobs. They end up getting tied to a job with health benefits. You have the individual markets for health kind of falling off the wayside because they can't compete with that. Employers are able to buy in bulk because they have large amounts of employees, and it kind of has this, the government comes in and tries to fix something, tries to cause some effect that they're trying to, and what happens is it's like squeezing in a balloon on one end and then the air going off the other. Like there's definite problems that happen. But the analogy that I was trying to get to was basically it's almost like the government knocked a vase down off the shelf. It's broken on the floor. That was them, putting a freeze on income wages. And now their idea of trying to fix the problem is, well, we'll be the ones to provide health care. And they're down here trying to put together a vase, using water as glue, and it's just not going to ever work. I get what they're trying to do, but I just don't see that it's ever going to work unless you have to have like all or nothing, 100% single payer or private market. I don't think there's any hybrid that's going to work. And I don't think the government solution is the best in any case, but obviously people disagree with that. But
however, who complains about Medicare?
Who complains about Medicare?
Yes.
As far as the demographics, the age ranges, or what do you mean?
My very conservative uncle, when I saw him last, loves Medicare.
Yeah,
he's a very conservative guy.
How old's your uncle?
Loves Medicare. Sorry.
How old is he?
He is late 60s now.
Late 60s. Yeah, of course he loves Medicare. He has the incentive to love Medicare.
No one complains about Medicare.
Nobody that's of that age bracket complains about Medicare. I complain about Medicare, but that's because I have accepted the reality that there's not any money there for me. There's no money in Medicare. People got duped on that deal a long time ago. The government says, hey, I'll take X amount of dollars out of your checks so that when you get older, we'll have money for you. And when I get older, there's not going to be anything there. And people are going to go, hey, I thought there was supposed to be money here. And then they're going to be all pissed off about it. It's like, no, well, sorry, the con man got you.
But that sentiment, if you go back and look, and I'm not mistaken, started in the late 70s, early 80s, is that whole sentiment that we can't afford these programs, but yet we can go out and spend just unlimited money on our defense. Right.
Yeah, we talked about that the other day. Actually, me and my co-host got in a debate about that because we were looking at how much money is spent on defense. It's like, okay, because I think where do we
who's bombing the United States right now?
Nobody. Where do we see the number was something like
there's a hole in my ceiling for other reasons, but that's not because somebody bombed my house.
Right. There was one thing in the Green New Deal that Ocasio-Cortez was talking about that I agreed with, and it was the idea that we should cut 50% of our defense budget. 50%. That's a big number, but then we look at the actual numbers of what is spent on our defense budgets, And us compared to, like, we could cut by 50% and still be outspending number 2 in the world. Like, that's ridiculous. That's a whole nother issue I have. That's why I can stand here as an anarchist on the outside of this and be like, okay, the right really likes the military, the left really likes the government benefits and the welfare type benefits, and I'm sitting there on the outside going, they're both terrible ideas, guys.
I mean, and again, I have, former veterans in my family, and I'm not saying that to say that the military is bad. I'm saying that we just spend too much money on it.
Yeah,
definitely. It's a beast. It's a machine. And when I think if you sit down and have a conversation with most reasonable people and you show them this is how much money the federal government spends on the military versus programs for Americans, does it make sense?
Yeah, no, none of it makes. I mean, I'm even looking at if you ask people like military veterans or military that are currently serving right now, if you ask them that in that from their perspective, they don't have enough supplies. Their stuff's breaking down. They're having issues with needing to upgrade their systems. There's all sorts of things that are coming up, and it's like, wait a minute, if we're spending this amount of money on the military, and the soldiers aren't the ones seeing it, because ideally that's what you're supposed to be doing. Like, where's the money going? Like, oh, I don't know, $10 billion to Saudi Arabia in a big deal. I don't know. Let's figure out where this money's going, guys. Yeah, and then wonder why we're kissing the ass of the Saudi Arabian prince. People, you got to pull your heads out of your ass, regardless of what side you're on. Like, anytime you're stealing money from people, you can't expect. If you're starting your whole theory on we should steal money from people and call it taxation, don't be surprised when they take that money and use and you're already breaking one moral, theft. Nobody agrees with theft, so why be surprised if they're going to break another moral by not spending the money where you think they're going to spend it or where you would prefer they spend it.
Yeah,
exactly. I completely agree with you on that one.
Yeah. And so, the taxation thing that we've been talking about, what has happened with the current tax plan.
Yeah.
We have decreased the amount of money coming in, but we have actually increased spending. So the deficit is now larger than ever. I mean, you can find the news stories. So we are borrowing more money.
Yep.
To compensate, because this is simple math. If you don't have that much money coming in, this is not working. And politicians on both sides of the aisle understand this, but yet the politicians on both sides of the aisle allowed this to happen. So something is going to have to. It's not sustainable. I mean, I've even seen opinions. There was one lady in a Facebook group on a thread. She said just basically default on the whole thing.
Yeah, that's going to be terrible. I mean, that would be an option, but that's not not great for the people.
Being an anarchist, I mean, what is your opinion on something like that?
As an anarchist, listen. As an anarchist who's flying in a plane right now, I'd really rather not have the president or Congress fly it straight into a cliffside. I'd rather we take it down slowly and try to at least control the landing a little bit. Maybe we take some damage, but I don't think we should all just completely commit suicide in the process. Like that was my whole idea behind if Trump was in office versus Hillary was in office. It's like, well, I feel like Hillary's policies would get us into World War III quicker than ever, even though people from the left were thinking the same thing about Trump. But it's like, I kind of got this vision of one of these candidates, or if not both, are going to fly us directly into a cliffside, whereas the other one might maybe control the landing a little bit. And I took my bet on Trump. Actually, I didn't take my bet on anybody because I'm an anarchist. I don't vote. It's immoral. But that's besides the point.
Yeah. But so the shutdown
Mm-hmm.
that was just averted again yesterday for the second time this year. But the first shutdown, the pressure, the irony, you said flying in a plane, but it was the air traffic controllers that called out sick. If you go back and look at the story, and specifically New York City. I remember seeing the post on social media. I think one lady said, this is like 9/11 all over again. There are no planes in the air.
Yeah, what a terrible system to have our government in charge of air traffic control. Come on, that should be definitely in the hands of private market.
I don't know. I have a number of friends in aviation that maybe we can bring together on that topic for another time.
Yeah.
There's a long history there.
I mean,
and I think the military actually would veto that too.
Think of it this way. I mean, the idea that Donald Trump, one guy in our country of 320 million, is it, can make a decision to shut down the government, and as a result, this many things are affected. Like there should be nobody in charge that has that amount of power. Nobody. I don't care what side of the political divide you are on. That nobody should have that amount of power. That's ridiculous. We should not have seen news stories where people are, getting ready to lose their homes, or, other news stories where people are like, yeah, shut down the government. We don't need it anyway. Like that. All of that is just, none of that should have happened. Like we should not have a scenario where one guy is that powerful ever.
But I guarantee you, it was the air traffic controllers. Sorry, I'm sick.
Yeah.
And it led to no planes in the air and phone calls to the right people in D.C. and throwing up and said, no, this has got to end right now. But the whole irony that is actually what it took in order to end that shutdown. And Trump still doesn't have his wall.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the cause of it. I'm sure it was one contributing factor for sure, but I don't know that was necessarily the cause of it. I don't really know what in the world got in there. I don't know. It's too much to keep up with when you got both sides, putting their feet firmly in the ground and neither one budging. And then when one budges, now, oh, he's a loser, he shouldn't have done that, or they're losers, they shouldn't. Like, of course you're gonna have these these people saying, well, this thing caused that and that thing. It's like there's too many factors that are involved here. It's a flurry of, like I said, one guy controlling the lives of millions. So of course you're gonna have millions of different perspectives as to why this happened, or why it should have happened, or shouldn't have happened, or how their life was affected or not affected. Like, okay, what if we just said, how about we not have one guy in charge? How about we not have, the ability for one guy to cause that much chaos in the world, in our country? That's too much. That's causing too much stress. It's causing too much undue pressure on our society overall. I mean, there's no reason that the park's trash cans should have been overflowing with garbage because of a government shutdown. Like, I guarantee you, if you get some private company in there running the thing, or I don't know how you do it. I have no idea. All I know is I'm on the side of freedom over theft. I would much rather see the solutions happen in the local areas, in your local communities, instead of everybody saying, "Hey, government, I got a problem, help."
Yeah.
And then as a result, they only solve the problems that the vocal minority is screaming about. And the rest of us are sitting there trying to work our day-to-day jobs, going about our business, and just trying to raise our kids. And it's like, wait, what's going on now? Like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I do better than most, but
Yeah, but I mean, to that point, I mean, yes, he called the shutdown. Mm-hmm. It lasted for a month, just over a month. I have to go back to the exact dates. But there are checks and balances. And yes, I mean, we could still be in the middle of that shutdown, but literally, I don't know that they actually grabbed him by the arm, but I mean, they literally threatened him behind closed doors with something and said that, no, you're going to either do this. And it could have been impeachment, honestly. It could have been also your kids are going to jail. I don't know. I mean, literally these conversations happen behind closed doors with no tape recorders. And then, of course, he comes out, to the Rose Garden. The shutdown is over. I mean, we don't know. I mean, that was one of the, the theories, that it was air traffic controllers. But, maybe one day, somebody will write a book or come out with a hidden tape or something like that. Oh, by the way, if you have just another moment, a state legislature here in Georgia has introduced a bill. Ever that I can remember, in Georgia, it is a one-way recording state. But all of a sudden here in 2019, a representative here in Georgia has introduced a bill to make that illegal, that both parties on for example, a phone call have to be aware if that conversation is being recorded.
Oh, by the way, are you aware that this conversation is being recorded?
I am aware. Thank you. Just over the state line between Georgia and Tennessee. I don't know if that law is in Tennessee as well, but how interesting that of all years in 2019, here in Georgia, they suddenly want to change that law.
Who's pushing the law?
This was a Republican. I have to find his name. in the story, but he wants to make that illegal now in Georgia. That two parties have to be aware of that conversation being recorded.
Wonder if they said why. I can't imagine it has anything to do with organizations like the O'Keefe Foundation that are going undercover and uncovering all these all these different stories and recording people, especially in the DNC, saying some shit that they should not be saying or doing some shit that they should not be doing. Yeah, it could have sometimes, and it happens on both sides. I'm not under any illusion that just because O'Keefe is specifically targeting at the moment left wing type organizations that it doesn't happen on the right hand side too. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it was very interesting to hear that news story come out. But.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's all silly to me, if you ask me. It's you know how much peace of mind I got. I don't know if this makes any sense, but just deciding, okay, I think anarchy might be the best solution here. I mean, honestly, not the chaos, Mad Max world anarchy that you typically associate it with. I'm just talking about no rulers. Just everybody basically has to follow the same rules because otherwise, you're not going to be able to live in society. There's a lot of peace of mind in that, just knowing that, well, all of a sudden, if that's the case, I don't now have to be well versed on Florida politics and how it's going to affect the national elections and therefore affect me. Like that's too much, too many things you should not have to be aware of. Does that make sense?
I can get on that bus a little bit with you, and until that bus, is minding the speed limit, and all of a sudden, there are cars going 200 miles an hour around it. There's still, there need to be laws at some point.
Yeah, laws, absolutely. I'm not. Yeah, that's a common misconception. I never said no laws, no rules. That's not the same thing. I just mean no rulers. I just mean like what I've been illustrating here is the fact that Donald Trump has that much power over everybody, and he gets to live by a separate set of rules than anybody else. Hillary Clinton, for example, with all the things that are coming out about all the rigging of the DNC elections and that kind of thing, laws were broken. She gets to live, when the housing market crashed, all those people that were giving out those faulty loans. Nobody went to jail. Like there's
actually they did. The guy that I work for, he's in federal prison for the rest of his life.
Maybe a few high profile guys, but not a lot. Not all the people that were involved in that went to jail. I guess what I'm trying to illustrate is there's a second class of citizens here, the ruling class, if you will, that live under a whole separate set of laws than the rest of us do, and that's not cool.
True. There are some of that as well. True.
Yeah. So, man, I appreciate it. It's been a fun conversation, and anybody that's been listening, hop in and let us know what you think, because this is quite a contentious issue. I feel like we both brought some interesting perspectives to this that maybe hadn't been considered before. If folks want to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, and I sent you a copy. I debuted the billboard. I don't know if you put it on the screen there.
I have not.
Okay, no worries, and you're welcome to if you want. But Indivisible GA11, we're on Twitter, Facebook, website, indivisiblega11.com. We have a billboard running in Kennesaw, Georgia, off of Cobb Parkway at the moment. But if Daniel is willing to put up the image, it is a picture of a stylized Uncle Sam pointing at you with a tax form, and what does your refund look like? But appreciate, Daniel, as always, these conversations and having me on. So.
All right, man. I will definitely have that image probably as the thumbnail for this video. So that'll be it'll be right up front and center. It'll probably be, hopefully that's enough to get people to click on the link and even listen to a conversation on taxes.
Yeah. We want you to listen to Daniel and Robert, right?
Yes, we want you. Yes. We're here solving the Earth's problems from our
making them worse.
Abodes.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably. Man, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yep. Talk to you later.